And then the hands are laid like this. And one then turns attention to letting oneself breathe. You don't do a breathing exercises, taking deep inhalations and exhalations. You simply let your breath come as it wants to, but you, if anything, let the out-breath, you know, the breath that goes with a sigh of relief, you let that be the emphasized breath rather than the in-breath. You don't close your eyes, you usually drop them a little on the floor in front of you. Because the object is not to cut out all the things that you might be experiencing through your eyes and through your ears, through your nose and your nerve ends on the skin. The object is simply to let one's mind alone, to experience, but not to try to catch hold of one's experience in thoughts. Simply to think. No, I wouldn't say think. That's a word we use very ambiguously. When I use the word think, I mean talk to yourself, or bring a lot of images before your mind which have nothing to do with what's right in front of you. So the function of this exercise, this posture, is to let the whole world come to you without interfering with it in any way, just sitting like that. You may say, oh, that's a great waste of time. There are all sorts of interesting things in life to do. Why just spend some hours sitting? And the reason, though, as I tried to explain, is that it is through this that one comes to have a contact no longer with a world of abstractions, no longer with a world of thought, but with the world that actually is. Now, as you do this, you begin to notice a rather curious change in your general feeling of life. You notice that there ceases to be what I would call an interruption or an interval between your experience and yourself. You see, in our ordinary way of using our minds, the chronic sense of strain, the chronic attempt to think about and make sense of what we are feeling, is what we call our ego. If you say, I experience my own existence, I am aware constantly of a knower behind and receiving all that is known, then you get this chronic sensation of there being an I, a self, who has all these experiences, and that I or self is what we call the ego. And this chronic sense of strain is our, you might call it our psychological blocking against our experience. The thing that seems to divide us from an external world, from the whole universe. But when in this way the interval begins to diminish, we begin to experience our world as ourselves. There is no interval, there is no interruption between the knower and the known. Just as when we are completely absorbed listening to music or dancing to music, we are not aware of our separation from it. We go right with it. And so in the same way, when the mind responds instantly to what the senses bring, it seems almost as if the mind and what it experiences were one and the same. Now, in a way, of course, this is actually true. We can understand this theoretically, but we don't ordinarily really feel it. For example, you know the old saying, if a tree falls in a forest with nobody listening to it, will there be any noise? Perhaps you know the limericks in which this problem is posed. There was a young man who said, God, I find it exceedingly odd that a tree, as a tree, simply ceases to be when there's no one around in the quad? And the answer was, young man, your astonishment's odd. I'm always around in the quad, so the tree, as a tree, never ceases to be since observed by yours faithfully, God. But this is a great philosophical puzzle for the Western world. Does what we know depend on there being a knower? Now, in a way, obviously, it does. Because when a tree falls in the forest, it certainly makes vibrations in the air. But those vibrations in the air do not become noise unless they vibrate an eardrum. So, in the same way, the light from the sun does not become light unless it falls on an eye, an eyeball. And two, we could say the external world is full of hard things. But nothing is hard except in relation to the soft surface of the human skin. Nothing is heavy except in relation to human muscles. So if there is not a human organism, the world does not appear to us at all as having any of the characteristics which we attach to an external world. In other words, we could say, the sun is light, but only because of eyes. Rocks are hard, but only because of soft fingers. Falling rocks are noisy, but only because of sensitive human ears. We cannot form any idea at all of what the world would be like without an observing mind. Even such things as duration, the span of time, depend upon the human mind to appreciate them. Space depends on a human mind to observe the world from a particular position and so know that there are things which are distant from it. Without this mind, there could not be any world that we could think about or conceive or imagine in any way whatsoever. And so this shows in a very clear way that our mind and the external world go together. They are inseparable differences. You remember in a recent program how I tried to illustrate the idea of inseparable differences by taking a coin or an object here like a cigar, which has two distinct ends, but you cannot separate those ends. This is very important. It's worth repeating because it's quite fundamental. If I would want to take one of these ends off and break the thing and throw it away, it would still have another end. There would still be two ends there. I could never get rid of the situation of it having two ends. So you see that although the two ends are different, there is just one object. And so in the same way, although there is a difference in a way between the knower and the known, between man and the world, nevertheless, these two go together, and they are fundamentally inseparable. And therefore, when our consciousness is responding instantly, without any interval or interruption, without any, shall we say, stopping to think about it, then we have a situation in which we are actually realizing, we are actually feeling the true physical relationship which exists between man and his environment. And this we could call the experience of oneness or unity with the universe, which is the function of meditation.